Oh, okay, if I sound, oh god, I sound really bad. I'm just gonna give me a second. I need it. So that's a little better. I am sorry if I sound really bad. I have slight laryngitis. It's not COVID. I've done several tests. That's not it. Anyways, that's why I might sound a bit raspy. But yeah, welcome to this video and this channel. And today, I'm welcoming you to another episode of trying to read as much of my TBR this year as I can. I think that's gonna be the title. We're workshopping it. But for this video, I decided to read the highest rated and the lowest rated book on my TBR according to Goodreads, because that just has a collection of my entire TBR. I think a vast majority anyways. And the highest rated book that I read was Know My Name by Chanel Miller. And the lowest rated one is Genuine Fraud by Lockhart. Can you see it? It doesn't. Anyways, those two I read. So yeah, let's get into it. This one was rated a 4.73, I think, on Goodreads out of 5, so that's extremely high. And as you can understand, I very much read the book, made a lot of annotations, a lot of little tabs, and I understand why it's this high of a rating, because it's really good. It's a memoir by Chanel Miller, who was the victim, survivor of the Stanford rape case, sexual assault, and basically she tells the story of what happened that night or that evening, and specifically the aftermath, like the whole court process that took years, and the effect it had mostly on her, but also her family and friends and just everyone around her. And it is so well written. Like, that's kind of the gist of the story, but she has a way of writing that you just gets taken into her story and the pain and frustration and loneliness that she feels. And it took me a while to get through this book, because I sometimes just close it, take a deep of a breather. It's like this story that's like so extremely personal to her, so poignantly personal, and at the same time it's a very universal story as well. Like, I think anyone who's experienced sexual assault or sexual harassment will recognize themselves in the story and the frustrations that she goes through. And it was just so well done. Like, you just realize very quickly that she's this really smart, amazing, very caring and funny person. And the way she gets through the process and the way she feels and how she describes it is, I think, something that a lot of people can relate to. Not just by sometimes feeling very lonely and isolated due to what has happened, like the way that society responds to it, and also very often the just ignorance that exists, or they're just not willing to know. It's something that I think a lot of people can relate to, especially, you know, when it comes to women and men who have experienced it. And then also, like, just the loneliness you feel due to that, and also just being let down by society in who you are, not being believed, but also like the judiciary system, which is obviously an even bigger group, where she talks about, like, I don't feel safe walking on the street, or I feel like people consistently want to harm me, I'm always on high alert. And that's something that I think a lot of people can relate to. If you're someone who's like, I can't relate to anything that you've just said, then this book is also for you, because it gives such a good insight into what it is like to experience all of those things, and just not really, like, it's never, you can't calmly walk at night on streets, basically. Also, at the end, it's like this really big message of hope, and basically like the surviving aspect, and how what has happened and with the court case her is still, like, now she feels like it's now just part of my story, but it's not my whole story. And yeah, I bet she has a lot more to tell, a lot more to say. I honestly would be very interested if she would write another book, whether that's fiction or non-fiction. I really loved it, and that's saying someone who is not, I'm not a big fan of memoirs, just naturally speaking. But this book, I feel like, is kind of a must-read for a lot of people, because, or for everyone, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. This is a must-read for everyone. I'll probably be giving it 5 stars. It was by far one of my favorite books this year, if not ever. I'll probably be rereading it. I have put all blue tabs on there. I just need to go through it again because I finished it 2-3 days ago and figure out, annotate it a little bit more. Now, the lowest rated book on my TBR is Genuine Fraud by Lockhart, which, to be fair, is still like a 3.5, which is still significantly high. Like, I wouldn't turn a book with that rating down. This book was actually recommended to me by someone on my Instagram, my bookstagram, when I posted a review of We Were Liars, and someone said you should read Genuine Fraud because of what you liked about We Were Liars. So I added to my TBR, ended up being my lowest rated one. And to be fair, I can see why it isn't as well loved. And the 3.5, I think, is very justified. I think I would end up giving it like 3, 2.5, 3. So I'll have to, I never, but like, rate them right away, because I kind of want to let it sink in. Some books you come back to in your mind a lot more, or you just have to digest it a little bit. But yeah, the book itself, by the way, let's just start there. You follow the main character, who, her name is Jewel, Juliet, Jewel. I literally just finished the book and I already slightly forgot her name. And she's kind of like, you're always wondering, like, who is she? What has she done? Because the book itself starts at kind of the end of the story. Like, you see her and she's like on the run, running away from something and packing her things, and you just don't know what happened. That's where we start off. And then throughout the book, you kind of work your way back into the timeline to figure out who is she, what happened to some of the other characters. And yeah, that's how kind of the setup of the book works. And the story itself, she's a lot of different positions, and who is she, and she always changes her identity, like, who is she really? And I think the synopsis and the way it is written sounds super interesting. Like, I was like, okay, this seems like a generally really good book, and I think those points severally like sounds super good, and I was like, this could potentially be really great. I feel like it just never really lived up to that, and I think that's partially due just to how Lockhart writes her books, which is not really focusing a lot on action, but more on like the day-to-day life and why people get frustrated with one another, which is something that we saw in We Were Liars, but it just doesn't really pay itself off the way it did there than it does here in Genuine Fraud. Because as much as I appreciate it, I think you didn't really get a good taste of who Jewel was and who she was as a person, which partially is the point, but also like you don't really understand why she does it. It's just like, yeah, I just, have to work really hard and I'm poor and therefore I'm like doing it. And I feel like that's there's so little depth to her character because you just don't get to know her at all. And like, it's like the reason that I'm this mean and terrible to people and I love being, doing the things that I did. I'm trying not to spoil it because I had a rough childhood. I'm like, okay, that sucks. Like, it's not a good enough reason at all. And I feel like it could have worked better. I think if she maybe would have focused more on action and the psychological part of it. Because I feel like a lot of this book is just telling you how rich people live and the very first world rich people problems that they have. which is kind of written condescendingly due to the main character not coming from that world. Here's the thing, I love the ideas behind it, and it just didn't quite work out as well as I think it could have. But nonetheless, I read it in a day, and if this is like the worst rated on my TBR, I have a damn good TBR, and I'm really excited to read the next one and keep reading as much of this as I can. But yeah, that's it for this week. If you liked this video or want to see more, comment, like, subscribe. It does really help with the algorithm, and also I just love to know who watches these videos. And if you want to see like the actual TBR, I have a link to my Goodreads in the description box below. Also my Instagram if you want to go say hi. But yeah, then I'll see you guys again next week, and up until then, happy reading!